Welcome to Square Notes, the Sacred Music Podcast. Your chance to learn about the teachings of the Catholic Church on sacred music, both in theory and practice. Through interviews, discussions, and music, your hearts and minds will be lifted up and better understand what it means to sing the praise of His glory. And now, your hosts, Peter Carter and Dr. Jennifer Donaldson.
We're live at the Colloquium in 2019 in Philadelphia, and we have with us today Marianne Carr-Wilson, Father Robert Pasley, and Charles Cole. They're all members of the board of the CMAA, but they're also working church musicians who have a lot to offer on today's topic. I always say to my students, if people complain about anything in a church, it's usually one of five things. The temperature, it's too hot or too cold, parking in the parking lot, the homily, no offense, Father.
I know.
The music, or lack of fellowship and friendliness amongst the congregation. So one of the things it's good for priests to understand that even if they feel like music isn't, quote, their thing, music matters to people. And so they should mind it and try to build a program that's excellent. One of the other things that's also missed, though, is that the music program can play a central role in building fellowship and friendship. How have you seen this play out in your parish, Father Pasley?
It's absolutely true. We have seen that choir members become catalysts to do things in the parish. Most of them that are in the choir are involved in other things. And on the big feast days, they started a tradition of bringing food in so that after the Mass, people could stop into the choir room and have a sandwich or a drink. And it's spread to the point now where on Easter, the Easter Vigil, without even saying anything, people bring all this food into the hall. People stop over. We have drinks. We toast each other on this beautiful feast day. So it's been a wonderful addition to the fraternity and the fellowship of the parish.
I agree, Father. And I think also in one of my choirs in London is the Oratory Junior Choir. And that's a group of children. They're about aged 8 to 16. And for them, the social side of the choir is really important, and it's probably a bit more important than it should be in some ways. Getting them to be quiet before we start the actual rehearsal can be an issue sometimes. But for them, it's very important, I think, particularly in their case, to have a group of friends who are like-minded and who are Catholic and who are practicing the faith, when some of them will come from schools where that's more difficult for them. So there's an important angle, I think, for young people to have that kind of space in the church for them to fulfill their lives as young Catholics.
Way over in San Diego, we see this all the time. But a choir becomes, especially as you said, for young people, it becomes their team. It really is a team. We see marriages and vocations to the priesthood and religious life coming out of these choirs, and we see lifelong friendships develop. And what you said is true, that more and more, it's important to have a faithful Catholic fellowship for them.
Yeah, I'd like to build actually on this point about marriages. I direct a chorale of music directors, and just this year we've had 2 marriages that have come out of the chorale. 2 of them met in the chorale and started dating, and they just got married a couple months ago, and 2 others had known each other a long time ago, but they reconnected in the chorale and just were wed last week.
Beautiful. I think also a way to get people involved in the parish and feel more connected is through these music programs, and to have sort of a variety of choirs and ways they can get involved. I find it interesting that a lot of parishes and pastors complain about people aren't singing enough. Well, it's fine. It's a good thing to make opportunities, allow opportunities for them to be learning and growing. Days of reflection where the choir comes in and sings and the people are learning something, these kind of casual workshops or higher level workshops where they can be learning and taking it to a new level. And a lot of those people will want to pursue choir at some point.
Moving on to another question about fostering community in a choir. In building a community in any sort of setting, whether it's a sports team, a choir, or any sort of group, it's the shared experience of some event or working towards some goal which builds people together. So I'm wondering if you all can share some maybe past experiences of shared goals amongst the choir that helped to bring the choir together. I know, Charles, for you take your choirs on quite a few tours and whatnot, and so that's a unique experience that only the kids on the tour have.
Yes, that's absolutely true. The Schola that I run in London, which has something like 55 boys in it, we do tours every year. And those boys get to know each other very well. They're spending a lot of time standing next to each other singing, and they get to know each other very well musically from that point of view. But of course, they get to know each other very well with their friendships and with the common things that they are achieving together. Obviously, a choir, one hopes, is always going to be greater than the sum of its parts. And if you are looking at a sort of big project like some of the ones that we do that run parallel to our liturgical sort of role, things like singing the St. John Passion by Bach, the Christmas Oratorio by Bach, things like that, big projects that we run alongside, which are really concert-orientated. They get very excited when that comes up because they know that it's a huge challenge. They've got to learn the German pronunciation. They've got to learn insanely difficult arias. They've got to sing a whole bunch of choruses that are really, really technically very challenging. And they love getting their teeth into that kind of thing. So in terms of goals, certainly that really drives them along. But also, on our tours, we do things that are quite separate from the music too, but do aim to sort of develop them in other cultural ways. One of the big things that we do is visiting art galleries. I think I've talked to you about that before, actually. And we always make sure that we go to one of the best art galleries wherever we're going. So in Madrid, we visited the Prado. Over in New York, when we were on tour there, we went to the Frick and the Met. And on our next tour, we'll be on the West Coast, and we'll be visiting the Getty. And the boys really love the art. They genuinely love the art. And on our first tour, I was just so pleased by the fact that they dived into the gift shop at the end and bought prints of all of the things that they'd seen. It just made such a sort of a difference to them to understand that art, that it's not some kind of old thing that's in an old building that they wouldn't otherwise go and see. They genuinely want to be involved with that. So those are things that are also very shared experiences. And I think all of that comes together to be a very fulfilling thing.
I would like to add to that, not only is there the social closeness of singing all the time with other people, but there's also a spiritual closeness that seems to develop many times where they'll share their faith with each other and support each other and pray for each other in difficult situations, because they do become almost a little family in the parish that cares for each other.
I know in my experience as a church musician, I feel like the choir never feels tighter as in the midst of and right after Holy Week, because we see each other about every day. And there's just a very, very clear vision of common purpose, why we're here and we're working towards this. It's very difficult, it's long, but a completely worthwhile goal.
So music can also play a larger role in the community, Catholic and beyond. An interesting experience of this that you have, Peter, is organizing groups for the March for Life. And I was wondering if you could maybe talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, so my parish takes a few buses down to Washington, D.C. every January for the March for Life. And this past year, I printed about 100 copies or so of maybe 12 different hymns. And it was almost like a Corpus Christi procession or a Eucharistic procession. And my choir and a bunch of friends and a lot of just the parishioners were all kind of in this general area. And we're able to sing in 4 parts hymns as we were marching in the March for Life, Christus Vincit. And it was just a really, really beautiful experience for the choir, but then everybody around us was also so appreciative. And it was nice to be able to be a part of something such as the March for Life, which is such a noble cause and event, and then to uplift that further with music, with art, and to lift people's spirits through that. After the march, my choir also was able to sing at the Nellie Gray Mass following the March for Life, and a lot of our servers from the parish were able to serve. So it was a beautiful community event that brought us all as a parish together as we went 3 hours to DC, and it was a lot of fun.
Probably others in this group could talk a lot about the experience of singing music out in public as part of a procession as well. So maybe one of you would like to pick up on that.
It's not really a procession, but what I wanted to mention was that our little parish, we started back when we began in 2000, a Mass on the Feast of the Assumption. And it's now our 19th year, and we are doing it in the Basilica Cathedral in Philadelphia on August 15th. And it started out with our choir, and our choir is still involved, but it's a choral outreach to the entire Delaware Valley, and now it's on EWTN. So it started very small and grew, and it's a way for them to feel really important that they are having an effect on the faith by singing this beautiful music that now reaches more and more people, and it's not just our parish. And we are getting people and comments from all over about this, which to me is really part of evangelization through music to bring people closer to our Lord through that beautiful experience.
I work largely with young people these days, and it's amazing to see how engaged they are, how proud of their faith they are. They get a moment, as it becomes a little more culturally difficult to be Catholic, to be a fervent Catholic, then they're with, their like-minded friends, and they're able to take the faith to the streets and do so with a smile on their face and their head held high. I think of Corpus Christi processions, they've got the Lord there right there with them. And these are the things that they treasure growing up. And they talk to me about, 10 years later, how those were such formative experiences. We also have some really fun kids in a youth schola that I direct right now. It's associated with the Benedict XVI Institute in San Francisco. And Archbishop Cordileone is a big supporter of ours. And he's encouraged us, and the kids like to do little kind of mini flash mobs. If we're going somewhere and we'll stop in a church and we'll warm up right before we go to another place to sing. Or maybe we'll go to In-N-Out Burger on the way back and just do a motet in the middle of In-N-Out Burger, a flash mob. They have so much fun looking for kind of creative ways to spread the faith. It really means a lot to them. And they have this joy that's brimming over, and they want to share it. And I think they're a great witness.
I might just add to that, the Oratory Junior Choir, which is effectively the London Oratory's children's parish choir, they also take part in processions like that, and Palm Sundays is one of the main ones, and the Corpus Christi procession. And it's the sort of moment where I have to say I sometimes feel a little bit of trepidation, because we walk out of the church and onto the main street, onto the Brompton Road, and you've got the procession walking down the edge of the road with double-decker red London buses going by, open-top ones with tourists all staring, taking pictures and wondering, what on earth is this? What are they seeing? And a completely extraordinary sort of juxtaposition of our Catholic culture and just the everyday madness of metropolitan life. It's an extraordinary thing to see. And the children are never fazed by that at all. They get on, they do their singing, and they become a real spectacle, which of course is good, because it's drawing people into wondering, what on earth is this? And, if these young people are involved in it, that makes it all the more sort of interesting to them. So I think it's, very positive.
Taking this to the area of outreach, one of the important things in your choirs, Charles, is that you do benefit concerts to benefit the Aid to the Church in Need. And I was wondering if you could talk about that in the context of music as a form of charity work.
Yes, of course. The charity that we do most of our work for is Aid to the Church in Need. And when I first arrived at the oratory school, running the oratory scholar, I wanted them to have an involvement with that charity. It's one of those few charities, to be frank, where you can know that the money you give is going to an unequivocally good place, and it's so badly needed. And particularly the focus that we work towards is Christians in Syria and Iraq who are going through every day, right here and now, appalling conditions, and people are being killed every day. It's an extraordinary situation, and it's very easy to forget. And our school already had a good relationship with that charity. And I saw an opportunity. I just thought, nothing has been done like this before that I'm aware of, to have an annual Christmas carol service for that charity, and also a Stations of the Cross, which we also do in Lent as well. I mean, it's one of my favorite services, because you effectively sing a really beautiful motet after every 2 stations. So you can get to sing some of the very greatest things, like the Lotti Crucifixus, like the Casals, O Vos Omnes. You can use some of the Tenere responsories by Victoria, so forth. And we started doing this, and it's built and built and built. More and more people come to these services now. But it's, even if they're not there, they know that this is going on. And we know that there are people out there in Syria and Iraq who know that we're doing this as well. And we've had people coming in and being present and going back to those regions. So there's a sense that those people know that we're thinking of them, praying for them, and trying to do something very beautiful to remind people about what they're going through. And of course, raising money is an important factor too. But I think really the crucial thing there is prayer and witness to them and to what they're going through.
We have 3 local kind of initiatives that we're doing with the youth school that I mentioned. One of their textbooks that they have is the Parish Book of Chant. And in this youth school, they're also taught to direct. And they're to the point where they're going out in family and friend groups organized by their parents of 4 to 8. And the mission is going into retirement homes and hospice care. So people who are forgotten in hospice care, don't have people visiting them in the hospital and retirement homes. And so a ministry is developing, if you just please pray for us, for the sick and the dying. The young people find that to be really, really meaningful to them. Another area that we've gone into, I'll go with, 1 or 2 cantor assistants, and that is the Missionaries of Charity have after-school programs for at-risk youth. And one of the sisters who attended a workshop, her name is Sister Maximiliana. She's a beautiful, beautiful soul, and she noted how Gregorian chant could bring such peace. It's an active way of listening. You're working on something together. You're using your whole body to be singing, and the music is structured this way so beautifully. So that's another initiative. And the third one is we have a beautiful organization in San Diego called Children of the Immaculate Heart, led by a beautiful soul named Grace Williams. And she approached me saying, the way that the young people sing, and she thought this would also be a form of music therapy for her clients who are survivors of human trafficking. Along the border, it's a real big problem in San Diego, and it's really inspiring to see how well their clients are learning this. These women are getting a new start on life. They're getting all their life skills going. They're learning about the faith. And this is something that they've taken to really well. It's just really beautiful to see that.
I wonder if you can talk about some of the friendships you've seen develop from those experiences, or in some of the chant camps you've run. Friendships that could be lifelong and where a shared love of music was the common ground for them to develop.
One of the fun things I see is not everyone who goes to a summer camp is there on their own volition. You have parents looking for these opportunities to kind of round out their children's education. Maybe they don't have choir in their school. Sadly, that's very common. They don't have an opportunity to learn this in their parish, also very common. So they send them to chant camp. Some of them are gung-ho, and then there's some more athletic types. Hey, music isn't my thing, or I really like computer design. All too often, I feel like we're segregated by our interests in our culture. We're segregated by our interests, and I feel like that music is sort of an equalizer. And so you see unlikely friendships forming, which is really fun. Kids from different backgrounds and, bonding with, if I could just be frank and use more 80s terminology, the nerds bonding with the jocks and stuff like that over sacred music. And the music itself, it's like, this is prayerful, heavenly, strong music that you get to be part of. So just reaching out to them and seeing those friendships, unlikely friendships form, has been a really fun thing for me.
Yeah, well, I might just touch on something Jenny mentioned earlier about relationships, long-term relationships between individuals who end up getting married as a result of having been in choirs. And I know that I'm the beneficiary right now of a family who met in one of my choirs. Not when I was running it, a while before that, but they now have 3 boys who are singing in the Schola, and they're fantastic young musicians. So definitely an upside there to those relationships that come from being in those choirs. And I think also, particularly when the girls leave the Oratory Junior Choir, they very often wonder how that space is going to be sort of filled in their lives, but they stay very, very close friends thereafter. The friendship survives distance and different circumstances, and I think that's wonderful.
I think that's also important in retaining people in the faith. So many kids fall away when they go away to college. They fall away from the faith, and if they didn't receive a real hefty spiritual formation that's supported by intellectual development in the faith and by friendship, it's easy to fall away when you are exposed to all the pressures away at school. But friendship, knowing that the faith makes sense and having been formed in virtue, and something like working hard in a choir can go a long way in helping people stay in the faith.
From a personal note, one of the best things I ever did in my life was to stumble into joining the choir when I was in high school. Had no idea about it. I was told to go and do it, and I did it. And it has been an important part of my life ever since. I'm 63 years old, and it led me to eventually join the CMAA. And now I'm meeting people from London and from New York and from San Diego and New Jersey and all over the world who I can call friends. We have a common interest. We have a common purpose. We love getting together every year. It's almost like a reunion, and it really becomes a part of your life that adds so much joy.
I found that to be true as well. Coming to the colloquium for 16 years, I found that sense of camaraderie to be something very beautiful. And just to know that the hard work that you're doing in your corner of the church, if you're sort of one of the few people in your region that's working in sacred music, just to know that this is really moving across the country and it's growing. A fun thing for me has been to have some of my choristers and choir friends come to the colloquium. And I wanted to touch on something, Jenny, that you said about, the support in the faith and this formation and an ongoing intellectual life. It seems to me that sacred music, and the Mass especially, is such a teacher, to be really soaking into those Mass prayers. When we talk about active and actual participation, the kids that are trained in these choirs, they know what they're singing about. And they know the different layers of the Mass, what's going on with the different prayers. Another thing, as far as the support, we've had quite a few vocations coming out of the choir when I was at St. Anne's in San Diego. And sometimes those vocations, have a little blip or doesn't work out in one particular community. And to me, that would be a very difficult life experience. I see some people that return from that and it doesn't work out. And they have their choir friends who get it. They have their choir friends who support them. They understand. They have a place to go. But when maybe, let's say they work in the tech industry, they're in religious life for a little while, then they get bounced to the tech industry or something. And people around them don't even know what that was like or what went into their decision making. So to see the support that they can give each other in those situations is fantastic.
So one last question. Could you all give a little bit of advice to either a music director or a pastor who sees that this fellowship problem is a problem in their parish? People feel like everyone just scatters after Mass. No one really reaches out to them. What would you say to a pastor or music director who wants the sacred music program to be a part of the solution to this problem?
As a pastor, I would say put some money into it, because we tend to go for the lowest common denominator and the cheapest thing we can get away with. And if you put good money into a good person and train them properly so that they can help build things up, it will almost be automatic. You get what you pay for, so pay more money for your musicians so they can do the job they're meant to do.
Amen.
And it's refreshing to have a priest say that rather than just the music director say that. Thank you, Father.
It's so refreshing. Yes.
That's
thank
why
you,
you're
Father.
the chaplain of the CMAA.
That's why.
That's right. I love it. It seems to me that a strong music program building up the life of the parish will also have a good financial return for the stability of the parish.
It does have a great financial return. People, when they hear good music, they're more and more caught on fire. And one of the things that we do in our parish, we call them choral masses, about 30 masses a year. We put them in the bulletin ahead of time, what mass they'll be for Sacred Heart or 40 hours. We say it's going to be $400 of a donation, and then that mass is announced in the bulletin being offered by such and such a person in memory of someone. And in 19 years, we've never missed a mass. And so all of that money goes to supplement and help the music program. And we told the people that they donate for stained glass windows, they donate for vestments, they donate for the janitorial supplies. Well, this is the most important art of the church. And if they donate for it, they're not only helping pay musicians, but they're also giving to others as an act of charity, the beauty of the church's sacred music tradition.
I think the other thing I might say about this is that I've never known a church that had a really good, thriving choral program that wasn't thriving in every other area as well. So you get scouts, you get lots of people coming through doing catechesis, you get a legion of people helping with flower arranging, cleaning the church, all those sorts of additional activities. And I think they all kind of thrive off each other. And I think music is maybe a kind of beacon that shows what you're going to get in those other areas as well. So it's definitely worth investing in.
Well, this has been a lot of fun. And speaking of fellowship and friendship, it's really great, as Marianne mentioned, to be here with friends at the colloquium. And we hope that you've enjoyed this episode. And we'll look forward to seeing you on the next episode of Square Notes, the Sacred Music Podcast.
We hope you've enjoyed listening to Square Notes, the Sacred Music Podcast with Peter Carter and Dr. Jennifer Donaldson. For more information about this episode, sacred music resources, or upcoming events, visit our website at sacredmusicpodcast.com. You can subscribe to our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube, SoundCloud, or your favorite podcast app. If you enjoy our podcast, please write us a review on iTunes. This improves our iTunes ranking and helps others find out about the podcast. The music you heard at the beginning of this episode is Hec Dies by William Byrd, sung by the London Oratory's Schola Cantorum Boys Choir, directed by Charles Cole, from the CD Sacred Treasures of England. The music at the conclusion of this podcast is the first movement of Trio Sonata No. 6 in G major by Johann Sebastian Bach, performed by Peter Carter. We look forward to having you join us next time, and until then, may we sing the praise of His glory.